How's it going, everybody? Tyler Bender back here with some more League of Legends World content, and group stage is finally done. That's right, we have our 8 teams who have moved on to the knockout bracket, and let's run down who those teams are. Out of Group A, we have Suning and G2. Out of Group B, we have Damwon and JDG. Gen G and Fnatic are representing Group C, and Top Esports and DRX coming out of Group D. Let's run it down all the groups. Let's start with Group A, of course. We have Suning at 5-2 is what they finished at, G2 at 4-3, Team Liquid at 3-3, and Machi at 1-5. G2's struggles against the LPL continue. Yes, they could not beat an LPL team last year in Worlds. They lost to IG, of course, in finals. It's almost become a meme at this point. They play against these LPL teams and they just get one shot by them. I don't know. It's just the way they let the drafts work out. They end up getting one shot by a bunch of LPL like burst picks. It's really awkward. But when they play against LPL teams, they just kind of seem to outplay themselves sometimes. Yenko has a hard time jungling. Of course, Yenko likes to play a very aggressive, gank-heavy style. And with the meta right now, it's not exactly what you're supposed to play. And I just feel that the LPL junglers are a lot better at taking advantage of little mistakes in the jungle. They're better at counter jungling than Jankos is in general. So G2 just seems to not be themselves when they play an LPL team. Suning, on the other hand, though, looking really strong. Granted, this wasn't the hardest of groups. G2 was the only real problem in this group for them, but they still look really strong going into the finals. Their team play seems to be on point. Sword Art doing a lot of work in the support position, roaming all over the map. Good stuff out of them moving forward. Expect a lot of good things once they get to the knockout stages coming up in a couple of days. Liquid had a really rough start, and I mentioned that they had a rough start, but I told you guys just they'll look better in the second half, and they did. They beat every team once, so they beat G2 and Suning and Machi all one time. They showed that they still have the tools to compete on an international stage, it's just they can't quite put everything together, and with a rookie AD carry and tactical, that may have been an issue. Not that he played incredibly terrible, but, you know, first time on the world stage, might a little bit of jitters there, you know. I think if they go back to America, they put everything together, they iron out some of their team play, because they did really well against G2 one game and then got destroyed by them. They did really good against Suning one game, then got destroyed by them. Did really good against Machi one game, but also got destroyed by them. Like, they just iron out the little inconsistencies in their gameplay and make sure that their mid game is really, really strong. I think they'll be just fine. Machi, on the other hand, though, did not play as well as I expected them to. They looked very scared in a lot of situations, and I said that this was a team that sits back a lot, doesn't like to push the agenda as much as some of the other teams do. You know, they're a little more passive in their play, but they're always confident, even when they're behind, and even when they do play passive like that. They just looked scared most of the time, though, and they weren't able to get a good grasp on the early game. And the meta at this Worlds has proven to be that if you can get ahead in the early game, then you're just going to snowball your mid game to victory. That's kind of how everything's been playing out. They fell behind a lot of games, and even games that they were close in, some mid-game macro mistakes like bad Baron calls, bad objective calls, just really cost them the game. It's sad to see a team of that mechanical skill go down to minute little errors that are easy to iron out. But it's just the way Worlds is, you know? You got to be strong, not only your mechanics, but your macro too. And if you're not, you're just not going to make it. Now, that was Group A. Let's move it on in to Group B. We have Damwon at 5-1, JD at 4-2, PSG Talon at 2-4, and Rogue at 1-5. Damwon looks incredibly strong. Now, I said that DRX was better coming into this tournament, just from what I've seen, and I know Damwon 3-0'd them. I kind of felt that was a little bit of an off game for DRX at the time. But I'm on the Damwon train now, guys. I fully believe that they are a better team than DRX, and they are probably the best team next to Top Esports in this tournament. Even when they're behind, they don't panic, and they don't fall behind often. They only lost one inhibitor. They only let one team get to their inhib tower the entire 6 games. absolutely incredible performance. And when they do fall behind, they don't panic. They can still make the plays. They find these little mistakes in their teams and they capitalize on it. The only problem is they can get a little too aggressive in the early game. And when they do, sometimes it backfires on them. And they get especially aggressive when the other team decides to try to set the pressure, the pace of the game. And they start putting the pressure, they'll try and respond, say, we can do it right back. Sometimes that blows up in their face. But they still look very strong. Showmaker doing a great job in the mid lane for this team. I'm very, very excited to watch them in the knockout stage. JDG looking very strong as well. They lost a couple of games. They still are a victim of their own aggressiveness sometimes. But with the way the world meta works out, it's okay to be aggressive the way they have been. Like I said, the world's meta right now favors that early game aggressiveness off the back of your jungler and your mid laner to help either snowball your top laner or create a very good mid game situation of where the enemy is behind for your bot lane. That's kind of the way everything has been working out right now, and JDG does a really good job of making sure that everybody is around the map and that they're sending 3 to 4 members to make a pick every time, having a numbers advantage. And even if they're down, they'll still take the fight and they'll win it sometimes. That's the way that the LPL likes to play, of course, but JDG just does a really good job at making sure that even if they look down, they know when they're up. For example, even if they're down, it's a 4 to 5, if they're up in items, they'll take the fight and they'll win because they know that they're ahead. They do a really good job at calling out teams when they're over aggressive, so I think they're going to do a fine job. Again, they took Top Esports to 5 games in the LPL finals. I think they're going to do a great job once they get to the knockout stage. PSG Talon able to pull it together in the end. They started off really bad, honestly. They seemed off. River and Tank coming back in the lineup, it just didn't seem to really be working. I think you gave them a couple games though. They figured it out. They needed to kind of get back into the routine of how they were playing because Kongyue and Uniboy kind of switched up the way this team played. They made the team really aggressive, whereas PSG Talon before with River and Tank like to play a little bit more scaly. They found their rhythm. They're able to hold their own. I still think they're a really good team. Hopefully we'll see them back at Worlds again. But I think if we learned anything from this World, it's that Kongyue and Uniboy really helped them out. And not to say that River and Talon are bad, but there's just something to River and Talon that wasn't quite working at Worlds this year and may not work in the future for them. Now Rogue had a good game against PSG. Other than that, they did not seem comfortable in any other of their games. And it wasn't necessarily a draft issue, though that didn't necessarily help. They were playing a lot for the late game the entire way around their comp, when a lot of the other teams have been playing very push-heavy mid laners with aggressive junglers so that they can go and look for picks, or aggressive roam supports with a good wave clearing mid laner and an aggressive jungler to go look for plays around the map. And Rogue wasn't quite able to draft that, and honestly, they didn't play their comp execution that well. You know, they didn't let themselves scale up for the mid game as well as they should have. So I didn't think they were going to be a good team coming into this. They kind of proved that. I still think that domestically though, in the LCL, they are a very good team. Maybe we'll see them again at Worlds next year, but this clearly just wasn't the year for them. Let's move on into Group C. Gen G 5-1, Fnatic 4-2, LGD 3-3, TSM 0-6. Let's talk about this, okay? I said Group C was the coin flip group. The only team that I was 100% sure about going through was Gen G, but I thought either LGD, Fnatic, or TSM had a chance to make it when I was looking at it. But Fnatic really shocked me in the sense that they were able to do so well and not even force or make it so that LGD couldn't even force the playoff, the tiebreaker game with them. Now, if I did a little bit more research, I probably would end up picking Fnatic because, believe it or not, Fnatic has not missed a knockout stage since 2017. They have made it to the quarterfinals 4 years in a row. I still have mixed feelings about this team though, right? They're super aggro. Hylissang and Bwipo, I know they're pro players, but I'm not gonna lie, they kind of have inting play styles. You know, they go in. Hylissang will go in 1v3 with his ADC halfway across the lane and his jungler farming a camp. He'll go in, but somehow they make it work. However, as Gen G showed, good teams will capitalize on that. And if you go in by yourself, you're dead. And they'll make sure that if you are too aggressive, you will pay for it. Which is why I don't think they'll do incredibly well in this knockout stage, but they've done so well up to this point, I wouldn't count them out. Hylissang has finally found it, making it work on the Leona, just going in, forcing plays, and they make it work. But again, it's sometimes a little inty, and sometimes they throw a lead that they have, maybe a 3k gold lead, they'll throw it off of one fight when Hylissang goes in by himself, or Bwipo goes in by himself, or the two of them go in together when their team's not there. That's why I think they're just not going to hold up, because the better teams are going to be able to take 100% advantage of that. And I think Group C was the weakest group out of all of them. LGD was the only LPL team that is going home. Yes, they played well in the first week. They just couldn't figure out Fnatic's aggression the second time they played them. I think they're still a really strong team. They just started to look shaky again, like they did in the beginning of the play-in stage. It's most likely they're going to be known as a streaky team, and they kind of been known for that. The best of ones wasn't really their strong suit. It's always been the best of threes. The best of fives have been their strong suit. So if everybody kind of stays where they are, because I don't think there's many major roster errors with this team, they will continue to be a streaky team going forward until they can figure out a solid, defined, this is LGD playstyle. Because sometimes they go, okay, you know what, we're just going to play really, really, really safe. And sometimes they're like, you know what, no, just screw that. We're just going to put the pedal to the metal, and it's just full gas all the way through. It's really awkward to see them kind of go like that and not have a set, defined style of play like the Gen Gs or the G2s have. So maybe once they figure it out, they'll be a lot more solid of a team. And let me tell you, TSM, not even being from NA, just in general, TSM was the biggest disappointment of this tournament. They went in when it was wrong, and they backed out when it was right. Spica got the first 5-man sleep in Lilia's competitive history. And what did TSM do with it? Literally nothing. They had 3 members of LGD, I believe they were playing, slept them all. 3 of them would have died, did not go in, just ran away. Or a Volibear was in his ult, you know, tanky boy, got a lot of attack damage, a lot of attack range, a lot of attack speed, didn't go in. They had the tools to go get some kills. No, they didn't. They just never seemed to have control of any lanes, and they lost when they had Orin. Yes, Orin can lose games apparently. Their team fights were never in sync, and because of that, they are going to go home. And it's sad to see that none of the NA teams made it this year into the knockout stage. But honestly, with the way that TSM came in, they didn't even deserve to give a pity shot to get into it. It's a little bit of a wake-up call for this organization. And if it's not a wake-up call for this organization, they need to figure something out. Because they dominated, or they didn't necessarily dominate, but they had a really good showing in the LCS playoffs, coming to Worlds, all hyped up. Like, if any LCS team is going to do it, it's this team, and they go 0-6. If that's not a wake-up call for that team, I don't know what is. All right, let's go over to Group D, the self-proclaimed group of death. We have Top Esports at 5-1, DRX at 4-2, FlyQuest at 3-3, and Unicorns of Love at 0-6. Unicorns of Love just did not show up, okay? They just decided not to show up for whatever reasons. Their drafts were not what they should have been. Gadget kept trying to pick these mages bot lane. That's not the meta right now. They didn't make it work. The Lucian mid was not working for them. They had a hard time controlling the early game, and they just let other teams just snowball on them like nobody's business. they played so well in the play-ins that I thought that they were going to do at least, semi-decent, at least better than FlyQuest, I thought. But no, they just could not do anything. They weren't nowhere where they needed to be. No Man's was inting half the time. Gadget wasn't picking the right champions. It's something that this organization needs to go back and look at and say, okay, I understand that we play a little bit of a different style than what's meta, but if meta is meta, then we need to play meta. We can't be trying to pick Ziggs bot lane 2 times in a row when our comp doesn't allow for it. FlyQuest absolutely shocked the world, though. They showed that they can hang with the top dogs. They beat top esports, and they did it in the exact way you're supposed to beat top. The way that JDG was doing it. You invade them early, and even if you take a slight lead, you don't make a single mistake. Which is hard to say, which is hard to do, right? That's hard to say, don't make a single mistake. But if you keep pushing the pressure, once top falls behind, they'll eventually crumble. Just because, not in a horrific way, but just because you have the lead, no amount of mechanics will save them. But top esports did exceptionally well this group. And they're still my favorites to win. There's not much I can say about it. Knight and Cars are insane. Jackie loves showing everybody how you're supposed to play Senna, just like how we showed everybody you're supposed to play Kaisa back in 2018. This team should win. And if they don't win, whoever beats them deserved it. DRX, though, the best game of Worlds that I watched all so far was DRX versus Top. What an incredible game for a League of Legends fan. Yeah, it was kind of boring. And by boring, I mean they set the record for the latest first blood in Worlds history at 24 minutes and 4 seconds. That means Baron was on the map for 4 minutes before anybody died for the first time in the game. It was an absolute fun game to watch not only the mechanical skills, but the macro skills. And yeah, it was a little boring because there wasn't a whole lot of action, but the mental game that went into that and the chess game that they played was so fun to watch as a fan of League of Legends. And it showed that both teams can actually play pretty slow. We know that DRX can do that. I haven't seen this side from Top Esports playing really slow, just handshaking around the map, just saying, you know what? I know we usually like to get out of laning phase early, but let's just kind of take a chill pill. Let's just scale up and take the team fights when we know we're going to win the team fights. Absolute fun game that any League of Legends fans would enjoy. I suggest you go watch that game if you haven't watched it already. A lot of fun. But let's talk predictions, baby. Here is the bracket. They released it the other day. We have Top Esports versus Fnatic, Suning versus JDG, Gen G versus G2, and Dom1 versus DRX. Let's run it down the list there. Who do I have winning, though? All right, just for the first round, I have Top Esports beating Fnatic, I have JDG beating Suning, G2 beating Gen G, and Dom1 beating DRX. But let's break each individual one down. Top versus Fnatic will be first. Fnatic has shown that they can play with the big boys, okay? However, Top has shown that they can play many different styles of League of Legends. Yeah, yes, like I said, getting them at the level 1 is going to be key. And what team is really good at doing that? Fnatic. However, once you give Top a little sliver of hope, they will just take it to the bank. They'll run it all the way through. They'll balloon that gold lead faster than you can even purchase like a component to an item. It's absolutely crazy the way they play. I also generally favor their drafts as well. The way that Fnatic generally drafts is for that early game aggression and just kill lanes and then just making sure that they beat you to the ground with the skill checking in the early game rather than the team fighting mechanics in the mid game. So I do favor Top Esports in that sense, and I do favor Top Esports to win the series because of that. JDG versus Suning. Suning showed that they are strong, but in my opinion, JDG is just a better team up and down the roster. Yes, both teams can be aggressive, but I think Lumao is just a better support than Sword Art. They both love to roam though, so it's going to be really, really interesting. I just think JDG plays the level 1 better, and as we've seen, the level 1 is kind of where this meta is kind of playing out right now, is what team is better out of champ select, and what team is better for the first 3 levels of the game is usually where we kind of see teams winning. But watching both teams at drafts, because of that, will be very interesting. They both like to draft aggressive comps, so we'll see how they work around each other. Are they going to let things like the Ornn go because they know that nobody's going to pick it? Or are they going to try and ban these more meta high win percentage champions just so that they can get them out of the game, but then also allow for other picks to go through ban phase, and then we just have a whole slew of crazy, I just want to jump on your face champions. It's going to be really fun. All right, G2 versus Gen G. Now, G2 generally has a good record against the LCK teams because they like to play hard and fast and that split push style. Gen G can keep up with the pace, however. Most Korean teams, of course, are known for being more slow paced, but Gen G does not have that difficult of a time keeping up with those more fast-paced teams. This is probably going to be the closest series, in my opinion. I favor G2 just because of what they've done on the world stage already, and they had some competition in their group in Suning, and I don't think Gen G really had much competition in their group outside of Fnatic, and G2 beats Fnatic, right? So I think that G2 wins this, but again, it's G2. They're liable to throw games at any point. If you watch enough G2, you know that no gold lead is safe on them. But the reverse side is no gold lead is safe on Gen G. So it's going to be a very interesting series, the closest one in my opinion, but I still favor G2. And last but not least, Damwon versus DRX. Now, the last time these two teams met, Damwon beat DRX 3-0. Both teams seem to be playing their best league right now. But if both teams are playing their best league, I favor Damwon. Chovy has not performed the way that I believe that he would, or that anybody should believe that he would. Damwon just looks like they have better team play as of now. They like to play a little bit more aggressive than DRX will, which is why I favor them a little bit more. And the mental side from the last meeting with the 3-0 might be a little bit of a block for DRX. So I favor Damwon all the way. Now, I favor Top to win the Worlds this year. And yes, I did my pick'ems, and I have who's winning in the semifinals and who's winning the finals and all that, but I'm going to save those for now. You know what? If there's anything that this group stage has taught me is that these predictions can go anywhere. So I'm only going to predict the quarterfinals for now because I think this is something that we really need to focus on to see how these teams are going to play in best of 5 scenarios. Then we can predict the rest of the bracket from there. But that is all I have for you today. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for some more content. Go follow my Twitter at Tyler_Bender for some more content coming up. Thank you so much for joining me, guys, and I'll see you around.